Welcome, everyone, to this August 15th version of Touch of Torah with Rabbi Barry Silver, our spiritual leader of Congregation Va-Dor. Tonight, we're going to be discussing the parsha called from Deuteronomy, and it's called SHOFTIM. Take it away, Rabbi.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Tonight is an interesting passage called SHOFTIM, Judges, and it talks all about the legal system, and it's kind of appropriate that I would be leading this discussion because I'm a rabbi and an attorney. So I have qualifications to discuss judges and the legal system from a religious perspective. The most famous line from this passage is Tzedek Tzedek Teirdof. And when the Bible repeats something, it means that it's serious. It does it for emphasis. Tzedek is righteousness, and Teirdof is to pursue. Somebody who's chasing after someone or a threat to someone is called a rodef. And rodef is also used like rodef shalom. It means someone who's pursuing peace. So tzedek tzedek teirdof means you shall pursue righteousness. Very interesting that it comes up in the passage about shoftim, judges. According to the American legal system, we don't pursue righteousness. We don't pursue justice. We pursue the law. And there's a very big difference. The Jewish scripture is regarded as very cruel and harsh. And in some ways, it certainly is. But in other ways, it surpasses our legal system because the goal is not just the strict letter of the law, it's justice and even righteousness. In the modern legal system in America, in Florida, for instance, they instruct the jury before the jury goes out to decide. And we have standard jury instructions in Florida. And one of them is, you shall show no compassion to either party. You should just rule according to the law. You shouldn't rule according to what you think is just or fair or compassionate. You should rule according to the law. When they read the jury instructions, the judge always asks, does anybody have any objection to these jury instructions? And this is boilerplate standard stuff. And every time I say, yes, I object. I object to being part of a legal system that has no room for compassion, no room for justice, no room for righteousness. I object. Then the judge smiles and says, okay, let's go on to the next thing. And they just ignore what I just said. But that's how our legal system is. And I think it would be much better if it emulated the Bible in that respect. In other respects, we don't want to imitate the Bible. Let me explain to you why. I will read you the passage from Shoftim. I don't usually do this, but I'll read it to you. And then you can tell me if you think that we should follow this law in America. If there be found among you in one of the settlements which the Lord your God is giving you, a man or woman who has affronted the Lord your God and transgressed his covenant, turning to the worship of other gods and bowing down to them, to the sun or the moon or any of the heavenly host, something I never commanded, and you have been informed or have learned of it, then you shall make a thorough inquiry. If it is true, the fact is established, that a abhorrent thing was perpetrated in Israel, you shall take the man or the woman who did that wicked thing out to the public place, and you shall stone them, man or woman, to death. A person shall be put to death only on the testimony of two or more witnesses. He must be put to death on the testimony, he must not be put to death on the testimony of a single witness. Let the hands of the witnesses be the first against him to put to death, and the hands of the rest of the people thereafter. Thus you will sweep out evil from your midst. So is there anyone out there who thinks that we should adopt this as part of our American legal system? I suspect not. It also says that we should make an inquiry, which is the basis for the Inquisition. They would inquire whether somebody did something wrong or not, and then use hideous methods to get them to confess. This passage also says that you shouldn't allow a witch to live, and it has other types of passages like that that are rather harsh. But what I remember from it, what we can take from it, Tzedek Tzedek Teirdof, is the guideline for many attorneys, not yet for our legal system, but it's an ideal that we should aspire to. I'll leave it at that and ask if anybody has any thoughts they would like to share about Shoftim or about the legal system in America, because we see interesting developments happening in our legal system as well. Anybody want to share any thoughts? Go right ahead.
So, as far as the justice part of the Torah, I think we should emulate that, but not the punishment part, possibly.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. It's the Torah is our first effort towards morality, not our last, and not necessarily our best. You have within it little kernels, little insights, ideals that we aspire to, but they hadn't quite made it all the way there yet. So it's good, as you say, Sharon, to emulate some of the ideals, but not all of it. Many people are upset if I were to suggest that the Torah is not divinely written or that there's parts of it that we shouldn't follow. But then when you read passages like this, it's hard to explain how they think you should be following this or that it came from a divine source. Their best way of explaining it is to ignore it. And if somebody raised a question, just move on to the next issue. Of course, in the United States, we have some serious problems with our legal system, mostly because the Supreme Court, the highest law in the land, has the lowest standards. There are no standards. They can get away with doing anything. There's no scrutiny. There's no supervision. They can take gifts. They can take money. And the Shoftim, the passage we read from tonight, says, do not take a bribe. A bribe will blind the eye of the wise and twist the words of the most perspicacious. So what that is saying is, don't accept trips. Don't fly in somebody else's airplane. Don't go on lavish vacations at someone else's expense. Don't let them buy apartments for your family members. That would be a very, very bad thing. And that's exactly what they did in the Supreme Court. And they don't report it to anybody. There's another passage here that's interesting. I don't see it here, but let me just paraphrase it for you. So the Jewish people wanted to elect a king. And the leaders are trying to explain to them, well, if you have a king, the king could oppress you. He might want you to build a lavish castle and might try to accumulate wealth. And you're better off really without a king. And the people said, no, no, no. We want to be like all the other nations. We want a king. So the prophet, I believe it was Samuel, said to the people, okay, if you want a king, that's up to you. You can choose one, but here's some criteria to make sure you choose the right person. Don't choose someone who accumulates lots of silver and gold. Don't choose someone who's more interested in wealth than in justice. And don't choose someone who has a lot of wives. We can see that in America, we did not follow that advice. And now we're repenting for the ignoring of this advice. And the people who didn't follow the advice are the ones who claim to be the most religious. They chose someone that the Torah specifically warns them against. It said, rather, you should choose someone who reads and studies the Bible every night and follows its ways. Well, we know that didn't happen with President Trump. but they still want to choose him another time. And hopefully our country won't descend into fascism and theocratic tyranny. And that's all I have to say about the current situation going on. We'll be talking more about it Friday night when we have our Shabbat celebration, which will incorporate some of the readings from Shoftim. And you're welcome to join us there. Last Friday night, we had a beautiful bar mitzvah. If you missed it, you can catch it on the internet. The service was recorded. And if you were there, but you'd like to share it with other people who weren't, you can let them know that it's on the Va-Dor website, and they can watch it as well. It's beautiful bar mitzvah. The kid gave a great speech. Came all the way from South Korea in order to be bar mitzvah. I wrote him a very nice song, which I forgot to sing during the service, but I did sing it for him afterwards, which was recorded, and that should be ready within a week, and we'll put that up on the internet as well. Anybody else want to share any thoughts?
Am I allowed to say anything?
You're welcome to say anything.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, first of all, say, like, one of the things that I had heard, you said, I had always heard justice, but you used a different word there. But so that's the thing I thought. The other thing, I was reading Shoftim and just all the different rules, and I know it was their stab at trying to create a normalized, civilized society. But things like, if your son doesn't listen to you, if your child is not following the rules, bring them to the middle of the town and they'll be stoned to death. And if you have some of the things like make sure if you're going to the bathroom that you go out of the tents and you dig a hole in order to put your excrement outside of the tent area. Things about nocturnal emissions, it talks about do that outside of the tents. Just a lot of different things. If you have a wife and you take her from some spoils of war, you have to let her have a month of time to get ready before you go to her. I mean, just all the different things. And I thought, yeah, I know, I get that they're trying to come up with, there was a lot of stuff about slavery, what you do with your slaves, and after 7 years you have to let them go. And if you lend anybody money, you can't lend people money that are part of your community that are Jewish, but you can lend other people money, but after 7 years, then it should be, forgiven. There's so many ideas, and I don't know that we're a whole lot better now than then, especially lately with what's happening in society and all this stuff with Trump. And, they're talking about Hunter Biden and about, also Trump's son, Eric, who just pled the fifth. I think really he's going out like supposedly all over the country, baptizing people and bringing this whole group of people to preach to people all over the country. And they're charging money for people to get in and do all of these different programs. And then he's going to plead the fifth. Here's this like obviously very supposedly Christian man who can't tell the truth about something, that he's asked about. So we have a pretty messed up world, what's happening in the news. And it's too bad that we don't get to hear more positive things in the news, so more people could be positive,
Well, you raise a good point. And it was Trump's father, Donald Trump, who said that people who plead the fifth do so because they're guilty. He said innocent people don't plead the fifth. So it's kind of interesting that he and his son are both pleading the fifth. Yet Tzedek Teirdof, there's a lot of words that don't translate exactly into English. Justice, judgment is usually translated mishpat, mishpatim. Tzedek is usually translated righteousness, but in this particular quote, you're right. It often translates justice, justice shall you pursue. But from, for instance, the word tzaddik, which is a righteous person, or tzedakah, which is charity or righteousness, that tzedek really is closer to righteousness than justice. Regarding your other observation, yes, the Bible is extremely harsh in many regards. Let me read you another passage from Shoftim. So you already heard the one that if somebody's following a different religion, you should stone them to death. Here's another one. When you approach a town to attack it, you shall offer it terms of peace. If it responds peaceably and lets you in, all the people present there shall serve you at forced labor. So in other words, you're going into a town and you're going to attack it. If they let you in, you make them all slaves. If it does not surrender to you, but would join battle with you, you shall lay siege to it. And when the Lord your God delivers it into your hand, you shall put all its males to the sword. You may, however, take as your booty the women, the children, and the livestock, and everything in the town, all its spoil, and enjoy the use of the spoil of your enemy, which the Lord your God gives you. This is really the type of policy followed by ISIS or Al Qaeda. This is not something that we should have anything to do with. Yet, I often face criticism from people who say, how dare you suggest that we shouldn't follow every word of the Torah? Do they really think this is what we should be doing? Do they really suggest this was written by an infallible, good, loving God? It's just absolutely ridiculous. That's why we practice at Va-Dor a rational approach to Judaism. We go Cosmic Judaism. Carol, as you say, the world is kind of messed up. I mean, we have some problems. The problems stem from this. Many people would rather have a bad explanation than no explanation at all. And many people would rather believe something which they want to be true rather than something that they think is true or makes sense. So for instance, they want to believe that if they say certain things or follow certain easy prescriptions, they're going to live happily ever after, and there's a God who will take care of them. And in order to believe that, they have to overlook lots and lots of things. And so they have to become irrational. That's one type of religion, and it's dangerous. Another type is a rational religion, which approaches things using reason and logic. That type of religion produces extremely good results. I would suggest that rational faith is a blessing, and irrational faith is a curse. And that's why we need to be putting forward rational faith. Some people think, well, we shouldn't criticize. If somebody else wants to believe irrationally, that's okay, let them do that. But when you read passages like this in Shoftim, and you realize that some people are putting this into practice, especially against Jewish people, like with the Inquisition and the anti-Semitism, then you see that it's not really such a good policy to just not confront evil. And the Torah tells us that you should chastise the wrongdoer, otherwise you share in their iniquity. So that's why it's important to speak out for truth. Do so in a loving way, not in a nasty, hateful way, and hope that we can encourage rational faith. If we can, then there is still hope for this world.
Agreed. Now, is there some sort of a link between tzedek and mitzvah in terms of what they mean? Or, because I think of mitzvah in terms of, we say, like a good deed, but really it's commandment or obligation,
Right. Tzedek and mitzvah are two totally different words. As you say, mitzvah comes from the word to command. Mitzvah originally was a commandment. And over time, it's kind of interesting, the word evolved as the Jewish people evolved. So the Jews followed the mitzvot because they were commanded to, and God ordered them in the original practice of Judaism. Over time, over centuries, Jews began to do the mitzvot, not because they were commanded to, but because they wanted to be good. They internalized it. They wanted to be good people. And so it became interpreted as a good deed. The language evolved as the Jewish people evolved. And so now mitzvah means a good deed. as you say, Carol, the literal meaning of mitzvah is a commandment.
But they're not linked in any way, the two words.
The two words are not linked at all. Mitzvah and tzedek, not linked at all. Yeah. The Hebrew words usually follow a three-letter root, or what they call a shoresh. Tzedek, it's Sadi, Daled, Kuf, and mitzvah, it's Sadi, Vav, Hey. It's totally different sources.
Thank you.
I think that's good for tonight. We've had a great discussion. I appreciate everybody joining in, and we'd love to see you on Friday, either in person or by internet. Ken or Garrett, Sharon, you have anything you'd like to add?
No.
Or Lori or Alan, anything you want to conclude with? Be my guest.
No, I think we're good.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. It's a pleasure being on with you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank
care.
you.